Do you know what really sucks? Is sitting down to edit your project and realizing that you have gaps in your coverage or shots missing. You need to have a really good, specific, and detailed shot list. Head over to filmmakersecrets.com/shot list, SHOTLIST, to get a killer shot list template along with some training where I show you step by step exactly how to use it.
I understand that it's really exciting that Pete wants to do the movie. And I said, I don't want to be a wet blanket or throw water on this, but there is no way we're going to be ready to shoot in 2 weeks.
Filmmakers have the power to evoke emotion, inspire thought, and drive universal change in this world. So how does a filmmaker thrive in an environment that is almost intentionally designed to bring you down? That is the question, and this podcast reveals the answer. What's happening, filmmakers? It's George VK. Welcome to Filmmaker Secrets podcast. This is episode number 3, and I'm so excited to introduce my first guest on the podcast. His name is Daniel Cummings. He wrote and starred in a feature film called Man Camp. So, Daniel, go ahead and say what's up to our filmmakers and share the one filmmaker secret that you've been keeping from us.
What's up, filmmakers? My deep, dirty, and dark secret that I've been keeping from all of you, and George has convinced me to share, is simply to project unearned confidence at all times. I'm talking pre-production, production, post-production. It sounds simple. It's in fact extremely hard because, as any of you know who have tried to make a film, a short, anything, the shit's going to hit the fan. And you're going to want to curl up into fetal position any number of times. But if you are the filmmaker, if you're the producer, writer, director, whatever it is, if you're captain of the ship, you have got to project such confidence that everybody believes that it's true. And that when you say we're going to make our day, when you know there's no way you're going to make your day, everybody on that set believes you. So you have to be an actor as well.
That's a great secret. You know, one of my mantras is do things as if you know what you're doing, because nobody else has any clue what they're doing. So as long as you can pretend, which I think we're all great at, then you can succeed in this film industry, this crazy whirlwind. So I like to think of my life, and I would like for you to take a moment to think about your life as a movie. So as we know, a character, about 15 or 20 minutes into the movie, there's usually a big decision that the character has to make, right? Typically, it's called a plot point or the inciting incident, right? So what was that one moment in your past that kind of set you off on this course? And, you had this calling to create films, to serve an audience. What was that one nugget, that little moment in your past that really set you?
I think it was, as cliche as this is, I think it was leaving home. I grew up in a very, very small town. Well, not very small. There are a lot of smaller towns, but it was like 5,000, 6,000 people, farming town, oil town up in Wyoming, very kind of insulated. Social media was just starting when I was a senior. Some friend told me to sign up for MySpace, and I said, why would anybody ever do that?
You still friends with Tom?
Oh, me and Tom? Dude, we hang. But I left to go to college. I went down to Texas A&M, which isn't particularly diverse, I would say, but it was like sort of, you're away from home. You're all of a sudden being exposed to different perspectives and different cultures and different ideas. And I remember I went there alone. I didn't really have any friends. I didn't know anybody, and I lived off campus. So I would go to the movies all the time when I was bored, and I would just theater hop. I'd see like 3 or 4 movies in one day at the theater. And that was a good year for movies about like understanding other perspectives. So like, I remember I saw Capote that year. I saw Brokeback Mountain was that year. Crash, as ham-fisted as that movie can be at times, came out that year. Rent came out that year. It was like all these movies that I was kind of at a point in my life where I was being exposed in my real life to different perspectives, and then also seeing how films were able to make sense of that for me. I had a lot of ideas of what I thought about things that I'd never been exposed to, but having that exposure and seeing and hearing these stories, to really like step into those shoes and empathize with those perspectives really kind of turned me on to the power that film has to sort of change the way we think about things. And I always from high school, I had this big grandiose idea of I think a lot of people do, of I want to do something that's going to change the world or make it better or whatever it is. And I was kind of seeing how the experience of seeing films and understanding perspectives through this form of storytelling, it was a really powerful and impactful way to change the way I thought about a lot of things. And I thought, well, if I feel like I at any point have something that I want to share or want to help, or I want people to think about a subject or a type of person or a culture or something from my background in a different way than maybe they have, then film might be the best way to do it. It's kind of like tricking people by entertaining them and then kind of introducing ideas and really using it as a tool to create empathy for, all kinds of different perspectives and views.
I'm always curious to hear filmmakers define the word film. So to me, it's a visual medium. You add motion to it and becomes a moving picture. So what really makes a film for you?
I guess if we're distinguishing between film as sort of an art form and a form of expression, versus, a movie that maybe it's a studio trying to turn out and make a quick dollar or something. I think it's just all it needs to do is represent your perspective in a way that's unique, that only you're able to do. And I don't mean that to say you have to make a film that's never been made before. Simply by making it from your own perspective and introducing and bringing that story forward, it will be unique to you. But I think that's the differentiation is a personal connection to the finished art. Film can very easily become just a medium of a bunch of people getting hired to tell a story that nobody's that interested in. I'm thinking about sometimes you'll see kids movies come out that it's clear they wanted to sell a bunch of toys. So let's throw together a plot. But I love kids movies. They're some of my favorite movies because I think a lot of times they are the most pure drivers of shaping the way we think about things, just through allegory and different stories like that. So yeah, I think as long as there's somebody is expressing a thought or an idea that's unique to them, I think it's a film. I mean, obviously it has to have some moving pictures and some sound probably. Well, it doesn't need sound.
That helps.
I like sound. I'm a big sound fan.
Speaking of sound, I was just watching over the trailer again of Man Camp. So let's transition. I'd love to talk to you about your feature-length film, Man Camp. So give us the log line.
So Man Camp is the story of three brothers that walk in on their mom with a dude that is not their dad. I should mention that they lost their dad years ago, about 12 years ago. They're going on their annual family trip up to the family cabin. They walk in and discover their mom having some special time with a guy that they don't know and is not their dad. So they proceed to try to oust him from the family by any means necessary.
Awesome. So it was the official selection at the Austin Film Festival, at the Heartland International Film Festival, and the Denver Film Festival, which I had the honor of viewing the premiere, which was awesome. Always loved before COVID, obviously. Yeah. I love to support local. And part of my pride is that it was shot all in Denver, correct? In Colorado?
Yep. There's one little piece. It's like a video within the movie that was shot in LA, just because we had an actress that was really funny that we just had a second unit do. But all of the principal was done here in Colorado. Most of it, we shot it stupidly fast. We shot it in 11 days. So 9 of those days were up in Nederland, which is that weird little town just west of Boulder. And then we had 2 days down here in town, and that was a wrap.
Tell me about your pre-production experience with the film, because obviously you wrote it with a team, right? And did you have someone that kind of finalized it and put it together to then transition into pre-production?
So we kind of just honestly stumbled our way forward until we found the way that would work. So I wrote it with my writing partner, Scott, who also stars in the film. We star as brothers. So we had a script. We had been working on it for years and years, since like 2011, we started writing it. And we kept getting put on the back burner, and we finally decided we're going to make a movie. And we had kind of a script with this one. So we're like, this is what we'll do. So we really focused in on getting a script done. And it kind of took on a number of different iterations, all of them basically based on us trying to rewrite it in a way that we could afford to shoot it. And at that point, we didn't know what cost money. So we still had like people falling off of waterfalls and explosions and car crashes and that sort of thing, which obviously those are super cheap to shoot. But what we did was we had a friend of ours that we were a big fan of, scripts that he had written, and we just kind of click with sense of humor. And he's a more experienced writer than we are, and he writes really fast. We write super slow. Like we improvise everything, and then we're like break it apart. What worked, what didn't, what was funny but doesn't fit, and it just, our process it's getting better, but we're not the fastest writers. And we just told him, like, here's what we can't figure out. And we like laid out all the problems that we had. Like, we can't figure out how to get from this spot to this spot to this spot. And we're like, just go to town, just do a pass, and then we'll talk about it. And he did one, and it was pretty much right on the money. I mean, we obviously, the three of us kind of became a team as we honed it into more of a shooting script, but he got it, Josh Long, he got it into a really good spot to where we felt good about, all right, we can kind of lock the scenes, we can lock the characters and start going into pre-production and breaking this down for a budget. And that's kind of what we did. Like I said, we've just stumbled forward a bunch. We started by just pitching the script to actors directly through their agents. And, with a little bit of guessing and Googling and whatever, you can find out just about anybody's agent's email address. And so we would just reach out or call them or whatever and send the script. And, most of the people are like, yeah, no thanks. Or, they want to know if it's funded. And it's like, no, that's why we need your talent to say yes to it. So we went through that process a bunch and just trying to figure out ways to get the money together. It's kind of a catch-22 when you're making your first film. Nobody wants to invest because you're unproven, and you're unproven because you can't get any money to make your first project. A lot of people do it a bunch of different ways. Some people shoot their first film on weekends with actors that are working for free, and it's all non-union. And they shoot it over months and months. For us, we knew, like, with the rhythm of it, with the comedy, it wouldn't work. And we wanted to have some strong actors. So we knew we had to just do a principal shoot. And we knew that was going to cost money. This is not Man Camp wasn't a drama that could survive on like beautiful performances. It needed life. It needed pop and color and energy. So we knew we needed a crew. We knew we needed a cast. So we just kind of, got it funded through family members that believed in us and what we were doing, and cut the budget down as much as we could to make a movie for the amount that we knew we had. And miraculously, it happened. We pulled just about every favor we could. And, when we were hiring people, we're like, this is how much money we can pay. And it wasn't a lot. I mean, our leads worked for, SAG ultra low budget minimum, which is like $125 a day. And they're just, and we're like on the phone with their agents trying to negotiate them, getting time off from their TV show.
Talk to me about that moment that you got Pete Gardner. Can you just bring yourself back to that moment?
Yeah. I was driving. We had put out a casting breakdown, and most of the people that were available to us, they call it offer only. You just offer them the project. You're not going to get them to come audition for you or anything. So their agents will submit them, and then you'll send out offers. And their agents, once they get the offer, they'll say, hey, I have an offer for this movie. Read the script. Let me know if you want to do it. So our casting director put out this breakdown. We got the submissions back, and we were really surprised to see Pete Gardner submitted. And I think it's just an agent going out to get offers for their client to see what's out there. Well, they called us up and said, hey, Pete wants to do your movie. But he can only do it we had scheduled 15 days of principal, which was already pretty tight. We had talked our director, also a great local filmmaker, Nate Baki, into 15 days. He wanted 21, and then we had talked him down to 18, and we were like, hey man, we can only do 15. And he was like, oh, okay, 15. And then we got this call, and they're like, yeah, Pete wants to do the movie. I remember I was on a road trip with my family up to Wyoming. So I was in the car. I got this call from Scott. He had just talked to our casting director. He goes, Pete wants to do the movie. And here's the thing. We're going to have to bump the shoot up 2 weeks to start 2 weeks earlier. And granted, this is like just weeks away from when we were going to start. So basically they said, you're going to have to bump the schedule up to like 2 weeks from now. We're going to have to like split it. I had like a family reunion trip that I told everyone. I was like, this is not negotiable. I'm going on this trip, and we will shoot when I get back. We were going to shoot end of July into August. We had already moved it up to beginning of July, but right after I got back from that trip. And now we wanted to start shooting at the beginning of June or end of June into July. And I was on the phone and I was like, I understand that it's really exciting that Pete wants to do the movie. And I said, I don't want to be a wet blanket or throw water on this, but there is no way we're going to be ready to shoot in 2 weeks. And if we try to, it's going to be a disaster, and the film's going to turn out poorly. And the team was kind of like, going back and forth, like, I really think we can do it, blah, blah, blah. And I was kind of a little more tied up in, because it was our financiers were, part of my family. And I was a little more like, listen, I can't throw the investment we had away on potentially making a film that's not going to be as good as we want it to be. And I just said, I have to say no. I have to say the earliest day we can start is July 10th. And they kind of were like, not happy about it, but like, okay, if that's the case, then you got to call him and tell him. I said, okay, fine. So I called him. I said, listen, the earliest we can shoot is July 10th. And they said, well, that's not really gonna work because he's got to be back mid-July. He's on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. They're going to be starting rehearsals for all of the musical numbers. There's just no way. And I was like, okay, all right. And literally like hours later, the same day, I got another call from Scott. Our casting director had called him and said, yeah, Pete is going to talk to the studio. He really wants to do the movie. So he's going to ask them if he can have the time off.
That's amazing.
I was just like, okay. And then the thing was, the studio gave him the time off, but they said, you can only be there for 10 days. And we're like, well, he's in the entire script. So we could shoot for 15 days. But if we only have Pete for 10, like, what are we going to shoot for those other 5 days? So we ended up with an 11-day shooting schedule. And Nate was not too pumped about that. But like I said at the beginning, I looked at him and I said, it's going to work. We can do this. We can do this. We're just going to have to shoot it a little wider than we want to and get a little less coverage, but we can do this. And he was like, oh, all right, man, I trust you.
Well, you guys pulled it off amazingly. I mean, I had no idea that's probably one of your biggest roadblocks is your shooting schedule getting cut like 33%. That's amazing. Besides that, what would you say was your biggest hurdle during production? Like the biggest roadblock that was in your way, and how did you then overcome it?
And I have to say, production was really, once we got running, it was pretty smooth. We had an illness kind of moving through the cast and crew that was not great. I think it started with our makeup artist was ill, and then basically everybody who had been in that chair became ill, and then it kind of spread throughout. So there were definitely some mornings that it was like you just had to pretend that you weren't absolutely miserable. But as far as the way that we ran, definitely the schedule was our biggest obstacle. We had a couple days where we shot like 14 pages in a day, which is nonsense. An aggressive schedule, 5 pages, 7 pages if you're, really want to push it. And so that was it. I mean, you'd have shot, 5 scenes in a day and you're like, all right, once we get this one, it's time to like have a beer and chill out. You'd be like, oh no, don't forget, we're doing this scene and then we're going and doing this one. And it's like, oh my gosh.
It never ends.
So yeah, it was just really the challenge was keeping that energy. And then, we obviously, everybody involved wasn't making a lot of money. They were doing it because they cared about the project and they liked the story. And, so when you have that many people that invested in telling a story well in the right way, you're going to run into some creative conflict. And with the tight schedule we were shooting on, we had to reset certain scenes, that we wanted to be at night, by a campfire. Well, now they were during the day, sitting outside or whatever it was. And it was like, you'd come up against these moments where it's like, well, if you want to get it shot, this is when we have to do it. And it's not the way you envisioned it. And it's hard, especially as a writer, because you've seen the movie in your mind 1,000 times and you're shooting it and you're trying to make what you're shooting match like your what you've envisioned. And the sooner you can let that go, the better, because the film is not going to be what you wrote. The film is going to be the film. And that's a beautiful thing about it. And it's better because of that, because you're getting stuff that you couldn't have planned on from your actors. You're getting stuff from your director, from your DP. Everybody is like adding their own little piece of storytelling, and it makes something that's so much more than you could ever sort of conjure up in your mind on your own, but you have to kind of surrender to it.
Oh, Dan, you're just pulling words out of my mouth. It's beautiful. So many golden nuggets. I love it. So there you go, filmmakers. It's sort of a process of being resourceful, having enough pre-production behind you and in your belt, so that you're able to deal with these inevitable problems that come up on set with scheduling and with talent that has another shoot going on somewhere else. Let's transition to right now. So we talked about the past. Obviously, a lot of filmmakers are struggling with COVID and funding, and some of the biggest concerns that I'm seeing online and through our community here locally is those things. How are you dealing with the current situation in the film industry? And do you have any tips for our filmmakers?
Oh, I feel like it's a hard time to be giving out tips, but I will speak to what we've been doing. So we've really been focused on getting our scripts that we've been working on, that we're excited about, in shape to be passed around and read once things start picking up a little bit. So we have a handful. We've got about 5 scripts that we're like really excited about, that we're going to start pitching here pretty soon. And then we have a bunch of other kind of scripts that we're kind of noodling around with. We're like, there's something here. If somebody passes on one of our scripts and they're like, what else you got? We'll pitch them these ideas that we kind of like. And if that kind of turns them on, then we'll really crank on that script. But yeah, that's kind of our idea right now. It's hard because our strength as a team is FaceTime with people. We can get people to believe in us, like if we have a couple beers with them over a couple hours, because our thing is like, we're selling an energy, we're selling an enthusiasm, we're selling ourselves. We're saying, like, more than the script or more than the production company, we're wanting you to understand that you're deciding if we're people that you want to work with, that you want to be married to for whatever it is, the 3 years that it takes to see this project through from conception to distribution. And so with COVID, you could Zoom, but I find within the industry, you kind of you don't want to use up your conversations. If I've got something I want to pitch to somebody that I'm excited about, and I know that pitch is going to be stronger if we're having lunch or something than over Zoom and it's buffering and it's dropping and whatever it is, I'm okay to just wait until I can have that FaceTime, because that, to me, I think they can feel your passion, they can feel your energy. It's just easier to kind of kick around ideas and kind of churn up some enthusiasm around something than being over Zoom. That's just where my head is at. Now, as we've been doing that, we've just been making sure to connect with people that are more personal networking connections in the industry. Just making sure everybody that is also working or trying to find work or trying to figure out what to do during all this time knows what we're doing, knows what we're working on and what we're excited about, because you never know who knows who or who's looking for something. So if you can make sure that everybody in your personal network knows what you're up to, that it seems like a given, but it's harder than it seems. Yeah, we're kind of gearing up and just putting together some pitching packages and materials and trying to pair those projects that we're excited about with companies and distributors that we think they would be a good match for, and then start reaching out. And hopefully within a handful of months here, we'll be able to sit down and be taking some meetings again.
Anything that you can reveal in terms of future projects for us? Any spoilers?
Ooh,
It's okay to say no.
I'll say no, but I will allude, a lot of the stuff we're looking at has a little more of a supernatural comedy bent than, we're looking for a little more budget. I'll say that much.
Always good to chase a little bit more money, right? Nothing wrong with that. So awesome. I want to come back just for a moment to something you said earlier on about the way that you deal with the actual storytelling in the script writing process. So you mentioned improvisation, and that's an interesting aspect that I think a lot of filmmakers don't think about because, you know, improv tends to be something for the actors, but it has a lot of benefits in the script writing process. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think the thing that we found is a lot of if anybody here goes and watches Man Camp after listening to this, a lot of those little bits, little jokes, little weird things that characters say, they all were born out of us improvising these scenes. They don't always further the plot. And there's a lot of jokes that ended up on the cutting room floor in the edit because of that very reason. But there's a lot of jokes that they don't necessarily move the plot along, but they're just born out of who these characters are. And what we would do is we'd hit these kind of ruts where we were like, we know what has to happen in this scene. We know that they have to agree that they are going to enact this mission and they're gonna go through with this plan. But we don't know how it happens, and we're making a comedy and it has to be funny. So we'd get in this rut where we'd be writing all this expositional dialogue and nothing was funny. So we're like, let's just forget about writing. We'll start a voice memo. Scott was working at a brewery at the time. So we'd go hang out in this back room at the brewery and we'd drink beers and we'd be like, all right, we're going to do this scene right now. I'll be this character, you be that character. And we'll see what happens. And we'd start a voice memo and we just kind of play the scene out. We wouldn't stand up and like do the whole thing. We would just sit there and talk and go back and forth. And when there was no pressure at all, I mean, these scenes would go on for 25, 30 minutes, scenes that are 2 minutes in the movie. And we would just go on these tangents, you know, nothing was off limits. And so we found our way into some really interesting stuff because if anybody's done improv, you know, you're just reacting to what you're listening to. So if somebody says something that doesn't make sense to you, you just say, what do you mean by that? You know, and you're forced to sort of explain your perspective or your worldview. If you've got a good partner that's drawing that out of you. And by doing that in these scenes, we found these weird ways of characters sort of explaining their philosophy. You know, I think especially like Kevin, the youngest brother, he has so many like philosophical lines about how he thinks about the world. And it kind of builds into this character of this sort of odd dude that just has decided this is the way the world is and declares it as fact. And a lot of those little statements just came out of these improvs that we would do. Like, Kevin, what are you talking about? And he would go on and be like, what do you know? And then you would just boil it down to like the one funny thing that came out of that. But yeah, I mean, improv is nice because as a writer, you're always encouraged to do a vomit pass where you're not judging it and you're just cranking, you're just letting it all out. Improv is like vomit pass on steroids because you're not having to do the work of typing. You're just playing. There's no limit. There's no time limit on it. So like I said, we'd do a scene for 30 minutes and then we would just listen back and be like, there's something there. There's something there. And then you just introduce it into the scene and how it moves the plot forward. But it's just a really low pressure way to get deeper into some character philosophy, I think.
That's awesome. Thank you for that nugget. That's a storytelling secret if I ever heard one. Last question for you, Daniel. What is your desert island movie? If you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, what is it?
That's okay. Because that's a little different than I think favorite movie. Because some movies are too intense to watch all the time. Oh gosh.
Yeah. I put you on the spot.
I was thinking my favorite movie is Apollo 13. And then I thought, I don't know if I'd want to watch that every day. And then I was like, well, maybe just another Tom Hanks movie. Maybe I would just watch Castaway. So I'd be like, it's going to get better. I'm going to get out of this. If Tom could do it, I for sure could do it. I don't think I've seen that movie since it came out in theaters. Yeah,
it's been a while for me too.
I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go with Castaway.
Commit.
Because I think it would make me feel good about my situation.
Right. Okay. So where can people go to find out about you, Daniel?
Find out about me. You can call my mom. Her number is, you can always check out kind of what we're working on at tangledleashfilms.com. If you want to find out more about Man Camp, mancampmovie.com.
There you go, filmmakers. I'm going to put all the links and all the information down in the show notes. Daniel, I want to thank you so much for joining me as my first guest on Filmmaker Secrets podcast.
My pleasure, George. Anything for you, buddy.
If you like that, then you are going to love my Cine Racing Challenge. This is a 7-day filmmaking competition where your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to write, shoot, and edit a short 60-second film in just 7 days for your one chance to win with over $10,000 in prizes. So head over to cineracing.com. That's cineracing.com to get registered. Spots are filling up fast and the timer is ticking before the next Cine Racing Challenge launches. So be sure to head over to cineracing.com right now to get registered. I'll see you over there.